So now I'm on to the makeup. I'm obviously quite naturally similar to Elsa in terms of colouring. I've got slightly purple around the eyes. I have very pale pinky toned skin with definite pink highlights and freckles. Unfortunately, those freckles can interfere. Like I have freckles right here, and I've got some right along the bottom of my thyroid, to the point that people have asked if I've got a goiter. Anyway, I also have a patch of freckles right here, which makes it look like I've got darker circles under my eyes than I actually do. No, that is freckles. You can kind of see the wee cluster as I get up closer, and then you can start to see the unevenness of my freckles. So I do like something underneath. This is kind of the opposite to Maleficent. Maleficent, I use a lot of concealer tricks. For Elsa, I prefer this as a base. This is an illuminating base, which is very hard to get for super pale skin. I love the effect of those mineral powders, but unfortunately, if I try and put them on, I wind up with an obvious mask. So I am putting a small dollop. What you may or may not be able to see in the light is this has a very slight pink shimmer, like a pearl, and that is what helps the light to bounce off the face without actually putting any pigment on your skin. I'm just going to do another little squirt, and this was a fortunate purchase at the airport before I got to the show, because I have been looking for something like this for a very long time and not been able to test. This company also does a similar powder, and I think they're called meteorites. You get a container, like say, imagine this stacked twice with lots of different coloured powder balls, including green and white and pink, and it does a very similar thing. So this just slightly evens out my skin. You can still see that little patch of freckles. Unfortunately, there's very little besides concealer that will hide that, so that's what I have on the end of my little puff, but I might have to go a little bit more creative. So that is my base, and I prefer not to put powder on where I can, so an airbrush brush like this with the tiniest swipe of powder, and that's possibly a little bit too much, and where I need it, places like my forehead and sort of top of the mouth, so it doesn't look quite so much like I am sweating. So I'll use a little bit under my eyes as well, but only a little, and that's kind of it. So I'm just removing as much of powder as possible and just transferring powder around. Essentially, Elsa looks like she is affected by the cold rather than unaffected as she says she is, so you don't have to do a huge amount of contouring or foundation work as such. So the next step is to get the eyebrows in shape. While this kind of settles, I like to do something that is completely different. So I've got all my brushes spread out on the table. It's a complete mess. So the next thing I'm going to want to find is, I'm just going to use an angled brush to help settle my eyebrows. I do have a completely different wig strand going across my face. So there's a little bit of the moisturizer that I put on before and that base helping to keep those brows in place. So yes, so far this is all here and not anything drawn on. But because of the moisturizer and the base, these brows now, pulling your hair out, settle down a little bit as if they've been painted on. I always have trouble right here. If I brush the hairs in one direction, my eyebrows shift down quite a lot, but if I brush in the other direction, sometimes they can get a bit too cartoony, villainy. And the next step is to use a pencil. This is actually gunmetal, so it's not quite black. I prefer using a mix of brown and black to do my eyebrows, but hopefully this will work. And this is very strange. A tiny little curl to create a slightly quizzical look, and that is very little that I need to do, but I'm going to use the pencil to hold my brows in place. Sorry, contact lenses are just shifting around a little bit, and then extend the tiniest bit out that way, and that way you can get really expressive with your brows without making them disappear as well. So by disappear I mean brows are very important for expression, which is why that frozen look with Botox can interfere with expression. So can wigs. This is actually pulling on my brow a little bit, so I'm just going to release a little bit more. And if you use a lot of product on your brows, you can wind up losing that expression, even though they're, you know, more obvious. That's what I mean by disappear. Oh man, this is always terrifying. Because Elsa has sympathetic brows, you don't want to create too much of an arch through here. You want to be able to have a worried look every so often, so that is very uneven. So I have a few brushes that I use for contouring, so I'm just going to use one of them to remove a bit of excess brow. There we go, that's better. There we go. So it's only a very small amount of pencil work, but just a tiny little bit of height through here and dropping down through here helps create brows that you can be very expressive with. So, and I naturally raise this brow, so please ignore that a bit. The next step is to eyeliner. Awesome, this is going to be fun. I'm just using a blush puff without anything on it, just to help knock back any shine, because there will be a little bit of powder on that. And this is mainly so that both mascara and eyeliner stay in place without putting too much more product on. My nose is still running, so I've got the natural little pink nose. Awesome. I prefer a liquid liner, and this liner is particularly liquid, which is fantastic. Oh gosh, okay, so nothing particularly special here. Just make sure to get as close to the eyelashes as possible. I might have to do this with a mirror. Okay. Mirror. If I can open it, there we go. because I'm using a mirror and not both hands, I'm not doing the usual trick of pulling the lid out, which is, you know, that it does help, but I find it can distort how the eyeliner actually works. I'm going almost into the corner but not quite, and using the shape of the eyeliner tool to guide from thin to thicker, and I think that balance is about right. Where the widest part of the liner goes will affect the shape that your eye is apparently. There's no hard and fast rule for that, regardless of what fashion will tell you. You use that to change the shape of your eye. If you want a more rounded anime look, then you want the wider, sort of right above your pupil. If you want a more cat-like look, you obviously will make that wider point slightly further towards the outside. I don't always do the little flick, regardless of the style, simply because it helps enhance your eyelashes. And similar for underneath. And that little gap there, you can fill in with white to increase the apparent width of your eyes. It's an old stage trick. In fact, it's still used for ballet. You do the red and white dots on the inner corner and outer corner of your eye to make them look bigger on stage for photos, and, you know, at conventions you probably don't want fully theatrical dots, so that's where you use like a pale powder and white eyeliner where you naturally are a little bit paler anyway. Wow, very dark circles. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to get eyeliner on the bottom. I aim for where my eyelashes come out. You can't see my eyelashes, but they do interfere with how eyeliner goes on. They sort of push it away, so that's why this part will always take me a little bit more time. I also have astigmatism, so the shape of my eyeballs is slightly elongated in different ways. It's weird. I can't wear fake lashes anymore, which is why I'm not doing fake lashes. The shape of my eyeball this curve has pronounced so much that eyelashes will literally ping off my eyes. I've tried it with several different brands, several different types of glue, and they all go bling. So I'm going to have to invest in half-sized eyelashes, and that's going to require me finding the right length to begin with to be able to clip to the, so they don't look like half lashes. So I'm just going to keep going. One thing that is quite nice is Elsa has very pronounced eyeliner, so it's good in terms of being able to apply makeup a little bit more heavy-handed than maybe you'd be inclined to want to go, and that just means that you don't have to be quite so ridiculously precise as you might have to be for something that is completely natural. So I'm just going to attempt to balance both eyes. And as you can see, there is a slight deviation. Once again, I'm trying to work in with my eyelashes and shape of my eyeball. Okay. I also don't draw on that inner line of the eyelid, in part because I am very concerned about my own eye health. I don't like anything getting into my eyes, especially when I'm wearing contact lenses. they make your eyes both more sensitive and less sensitive, so that sometimes you can miss if a piece of grit has got into your eye. You can think, oh, it's just my eye, it's just my contact lens, I'll ignore it. Not a good idea, but you know, sometimes at the end of a convention you're just that tired. And because you've got the contact lens, sometimes that grit can be more pronounced in terms of pain. So I prefer not to have any makeup get into my eye in the first place. But other people do it, and you know, they're happy. Just be careful and be aware. If anything hurts around your eye, it's not a good sign. It's not also sometimes safer to have your own compact rather than going into a toilet where a lot of people have been. Even a hotel bathroom, you want to clean up before you start poking around your eyes. So just always be aware when you're working around your eyes to not poke yourself in the eyeball, and to have some saline rinse on hand. Even though in an emergency you can run your tap water over your eyes, it's not a good idea, especially when you've got contact lenses, because stuff lives in your taps. So I always recommend just having some saline solution on hand to be able to rinse out your eyes, and to also rinse off stuff from your hands while you're working with makeup. Not as a be all and end all to cleaning your hands, obviously, but to just wash off any powder that falls. So this is always the fun part, doing the opposite side. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that today. Now to this is the unfortunate part of trying to work with a pen that doesn't get shorter. I prefer eyeliners to be much shorter in my hand so that I can get all these different angles. Okay. There's just something about trying to record doing this that makes it suddenly so much harder. That said, I do like to take my time doing my makeup rather than be in a rush. And the first and only time I've been able to do that was the very last time I wore this, a week ago today actually, and I was doing my makeup about this time as well. Even though this is a liquid, you can smudge it a little to soften up the edges. And what I also do is, once I've got this fairly solid line put on, I will use a smudgy brown pencil to just soften that up a bit and also slightly dramatify it. But that fine line will show through and act as a guide. Don't need to do the top. So just fill in. So here. This pencil will also basically smush down eyelashes that are a bit astray. Okay. So that's kind of just shortened my eyes a little bit at the same time, but I prefer to even that up once I've got the eyeshadow on. In fact, I prefer doing my eyeshadow first, but this is an in case things fail type day, which, you know, I'm already 20 minutes into this video and all I've done is my brows and eyeliner, so next step is to get mascara on. I don't know how obvious it is, but I prefer to bring my eyelash down onto the wand rather than push up, at least on my right eye. On my left eye, because of this whole crossing the body thing, sometimes it can be easier to start with one. And because I have dyed my eyelashes, I find it much easier putting mascara on because I don't have to work it all the way down to the roots. Oh, strand of hair, it's gone astray, so I'm just going to put that back. So as I was saying, I prefer getting the base of eyelashes and eyeliner on after I do my makeup, but the shadow effects. But you can also do in layers, so that this is a guide to put the shadow on and where to fill it in, and then you can double over. But I have two little custom palettes. I'm not sure how easy it is to see. This one you can tell is a purple, but what you can't tell is it's pearlescent. This one looks like it's white, but it's actually interference red, which is a mica pigment. So if you can imagine normal pigments being kind of clusters of little grains that basically block light, so it comes in and then gets caught in between these clusters of pigments and then reflects back the color that you see. What mica is, it's like little sheets like this, so when you look directly on them, it's very sheer, so you can see right through to the underlayer. But as soon as you move on an angle, that's when you start to see the color. So that's how this interference red works. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show this. So I've got the powder on my finger, it looks like it's white, and then I brush it on, and it should show it pinkish, except my light is not that great, so hopefully this will show up once it's actually on my eyes. And the other color, as I said, is an amazing purple fluorescent color. It's a full-on violet, and the tiniest amount of it goes very fast. So I'm just going to have to tidy a little before I even go anywhere near. So this is a completely clean, and it's an angled brush. It doesn't have to be, but I'm just picking up the tiniest amount of powder that's spilled onto the outside here and around the outside of the container, and I'm just going to slightly powder a little bit because this is so dark that if you don't have a lightly powdered surface, you're going to wind up with streaks. So I'm going to look and see the crease of my eye, start from the outside and go inside. I don't have to be quite so frightened as I thought. So basically from that wingtip along the brow and inside. A little higher and blend that in. And this is where you get to play with your eye shape. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of depth or gap between the powder and my brow right at the top there, and I want a slightly more rounded eye. Taking on the back of my hand and trying to make that a little bit rounder. So that's much softer than what I just had. And of course the trick is always to get that on both sides. So you can see on this side where the shadow falls, and that's where I want to put the darker purple. Again, it's around the outside and not on the lid proper. I keep making the mistake of putting this right into the crease when I don't want it right in the crease. I want it to give me as much of my eyelid as possible uncoloured or unshadowed, so that it stands out a little bit more and makes your eyes just that tiny little bit bigger. So the tiniest bit more here. And again, I'm going to use this little sponge to try and reduce a little bit on the eyelid proper. So there's that. I also have a flat fill bit to see if I can create a little bit more shape. This is how much purple I've wasted already. So I'm just, the side that I put the powder on, you can see that it's on one side, not the other, is the side that goes up, so that you don't wind up, well, so that I don't wind up adding more onto my eyelid. So that's the handy thing about these, it is filbert, yes. It's the round flat paddle shape. So again, no powder on one side, powder on the side that's going up. And as you can see, that's just applied a really heavy layer. Sorry, my New Zealand accent, really heavy layer. So brush or bronzer brush, just to soften, as you can just pat. You don't have to swipe. Swiping will push it into one direction or the other. So I quite often just pat so it lifts it up without moving it across. And then I get a softer round brush. Again, I'm not sure how well this shows up. That looks like it's interference green for some reason. No, it's definitely red. So I'm laying quite heavily on the brush and then patting it so it's quite even. The first thing I want to do is put it right under the brow, sorry. I might have to change the video settings to show this up, because this interference red is what makes Elsa's eyes look so glistening and kind of dewy, but not. I'm really sorry this isn't showing up. It shows up in photos quite well, and in reality very, very well indeed. I'm just going to keep going. I've used interference pigment all over my Blood Dragon armour. That's what makes it purple in some parts. So it is very effective. Just unfortunately not when you've got your camera to the wrong setting. The white balance for this camera, I think, is set too much towards as if it was a bright day, which is why everything's kind of cool toned. But you can at least see that this is creating a pearly effect, just not what that effect actually is. Oops, into the eyebrow. What I have done is I've wound up putting the powder over my eyeliner, so I'll need to fix that up in a second. So that is how I shape my eyes to be slightly more soft focus and more animated effect. So I'm just going to put a little bit of powder under, just in case any of that powder from the eyelid falls down. And to soften up, once again, I use this. Not too much, because this will take off a lot of powder without realizing it. But I'm going to have to put the lid on this, as it's just getting everywhere. These colours are basically pure pigments, and you can buy them from, there's a wholesaler trading company which I'll try and link to as soon as I can. But the interference red at the very least is available from Kryolan as, I think it's their Eye Brights range. They have interference red, which looks slightly tiny bit golden toned. And then they have the other, they look pearly, but they are interference violet and I think interference blue. So yes, Kryolan has them. So this is what it looks like without good lighting. It looks so much better with good lighting. And I'm just going to use my liquid liner to touch up those eyes, those lines again. And while I'm here, I'm just going to bring down some colour right to my eyelashes. Because a lot of photographers at events will film you from an angle like this. Quite often it'll catch skin through your mascara, so I try to avoid that where possible. It's not always possible. Sorry, once again, trying to put mascara on while filming. Sorry, eyeliner. And now this liner is getting a bit gunky, so I'm just going to clean it. There's a point in my sponge which I just simply don't use, so it's, my sponge gets cleaned regularly, so it's kind of one of the easiest places just to safely clean a liquid liner. And now I'm getting to the part where my tools are drying out and moving stuff rather than laying down. So I'm going to bust out the really soft eyeliner pencil. There we go. That happens sometimes, which is why I like to have the two on hand in case one fails. So sometimes this can be too soft and too blunt, and sometimes this can be too thin and then lift stuff off. So I'm just going to have to even up this side now as well. That's better. Yeah. And now one last pass of the mascara to lift those eyelashes again. Some powder from the eyelid can fall, and rather than pile up more mascara on the top, I'm kind of using this brush as a comb and to push the lashes up. I am pretty lucky that my eyelashes have grown back in, because again, with the hair loss from the medication, that wasn't just from my scalp, that was also my eyelashes, and it's taken a long time for them to grow back in. Same with my eyebrows, and that was kind of interesting, dyeing my eyebrows just recently and plucking them for 4 days straight to get them this narrow. But worth it. So yeah, that was a wick strand. So that's the basic Elsa shape. It should take only about half that time, but because I'm working with the camera, I really didn't want to rush. So the last thing to do for the face is to put some blush on. I use a very pale blendable, and it's a cool tone because I am cool toned. I'm having trouble opening my containers because I've got almost no fingernail left. So I will use another, well, it's essentially a mineral brush or a bronzer brush. It's just very soft and very round, and swish around so you get a nice sort of airbrush effect. And here's the thing, you aim for the apples of the cheeks, not try and do cheekbones, because, well, she's an animated character, so she's got a very round face. And this is something that they did on the BBC Pride and Prejudice as well. They put the blush on the apple of the cheek rather than streaking up. And this, well, it's part of the makeup aesthetic of the time anyway, to look kind of like a doll. But yeah, the apples, and just keep blending to where you need to. But the other thing to do is the chin. There we go. And the tip of the nose. And I'm sweeping down because I don't want to brush my nostrils, basically. So you kind of look like you've got a little bit of a cold, but that's okay because it doesn't bother you anyway. Haha. But the other thing to do is to use the same blush as a little bit of a jaw definer. You don't want to go full on contouring because she's quite round, but you do want some distinction, and this just keeps the colour flowing through. Yes, I'm also putting a little bit up by my hairline again to create dimension. Most of this disappears in the photos, but it actually is very important. Much like fabric texture is very important, even though on film it really shows up. Without it, everything winds up looking quite plasticky. So just seeing if there's anywhere that could do with this being a little bit more obvious. I'm looking for a brush to do it. So just a tiny little bit on the eyes, because this is a very cool toned monitor, but sometimes cameras can be as well. Just a little bit to soften the bridge of my nose. There we go, that's better. And finally the lips. I'm just going to have to go off screen very briefly to grab that. And again, because I don't like to keep retouching my makeup throughout the day, I'm using a liquid lip stain rather than a lipstick. Because it just defines the lips rather than acts like a paint. And something I learnt while at the convention is I really don't have to go right up to my lip line, because when I smile my lips kind of flatten out, so it's better to have slightly smaller lips than slightly larger. And then I have a couple of lip gloss options. This one is my favourite. It's slightly lighter, so it winds up, excuse me, being a little bit more like the Frozen Fever makeup. voila, 40 minutes later, sorry for taking the extra time, we have an Elsa look. So that is, oops, and my wig, as I kind of mentioned in one of my intro videos to this, my wig has started to move backwards. So that's one of the reasons to do your makeup, I suppose, after you put the wig on, because you then are able to fix that if you have the time and the patience. So just hide with the wig. Yeah, so there we go. What should be a much faster makeup application, I kind of make a little bit longer because I want to make sure that I have enough eyelid showing. That is really annoying that that's not showing up, that interference red. I'll see if I can take a photo and put it at the end. And I of course did not hide those freckles properly. But that is a job for a small amount of concealer. So, sorry for the off-screen tinkering. The main points are eyebrows are flexible and expressive. So, where possible, shape. Now that's something I can't really show on film because it does take a few hours for me, because my eyebrows are naturally this wide and they grow right towards the middle, so this is a lot of shaping. Yes, expressive eyebrows, long narrow eyebrows to allow you to really move, because even though Elsa's not quite as enthusiastic as her sister, she still has her derp moments, which is great because I love bling faces and too often I don't get a chance to, so yay. Not too much contouring, and using a fairly bright blush in the same tones as the lipstick. And so annoying that's not showing up. Interference red, it does actually show up in photos, to the point that sometimes I'll use a little bit extra and put it on my cheeks just to raise them up a little bit as well. So hopefully that's at least somewhat helpful. Not really a whole lot to say, except that it's not so contoured and angular as Maleficent, for example. And the absolute biggest change in feature is the eyebrows. I don't think I can overstate the importance of Elsa's eyebrows for framing the entire face. And trying not to have your wig come too far down, a little bit far enough to completely hide your hairline is good. That's not entirely possible at the sides, but too far back on a head like mine and you wind up with this rectangle face, and too far down and you wind up losing a lot of expression in your face. So that's the only other pointer I can really give. And now I'm going to wash all this off because today is supposed to be my day of working in the workshop. So I'm also going to show just do a really quick example of the wig that I did buy in its natural state, and if I can, I'm going to try and do a video of me braiding it, because the wig itself lends itself to braiding really nicely. So now that it's almost exactly 45 minutes, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see if I get this uploaded.